So I bumped into SA Health Minister Chris Picton on the streets of Adelaide and asked him a very simple question that he couldn't answer. And that's today on The Dr. Jo Show. So as most of you guys know, last year I was part of a drafting team that drafted a bill for the South Australian Parliament, and it said that in the third trimester, after 28 weeks, if a mother was presenting with serious health issues, she had mental health or physical health problems, then instead of injecting that baby with potassium chloride and forcing that mother to give birth to a dead baby, this bill simply said that we would deliver that baby alive, that we would skip the injection and deliver the baby alive. It made perfect sense. I could not think when we were drafting this of a reason to oppose it, because it allows a woman to terminate her pregnancy through all 9 months, but it just says that after the third trimester, we're going to protect the human rights of that child. We're going to protect and recognise the human rights of the mother. She has to give birth anyway, so let's deliver that child alive. So when I bumped into Chris Picton after we'd lost this bill by 1 vote. So that was just heartbreaking. One of the hardest things about last year. I'm going to share that in a future episode. But for now, I'm just going to show you and talk about today what happened when I confronted Chris Picton about this bill. Let's take a look.
Do you think it's a big deal if even one healthy baby is injected with potassium chloride after 28 weeks in the heart and then delivered stillborn with dead alive?
To me, I think this is always going to be a difficult issue, and I think these are very difficult decisions
Give me
by women and by doctors.
It's totally unnecessary to deliver that baby dead. We could just deliver that baby alive. And so, in your mind, is that something that you would consider as worth doing?
I think that these are very difficult decisions that are made by doctors.
I'd just like to know, you're a dad, aren't you? You've probably been at your wife's births. This is after 28 weeks, we've got a baby that's fully formed, 96% chance of survival, and you're saying it's a very difficult decision as to whether we deliver that baby alive instead of stillborn. The mother has to give birth.
And I think that there are obviously circumstances in which there are a range of issues.
It makes my blood boil, actually, to just hear him obfuscate when I'm asking him a very simple question, and it has made your blood boil too. This video already is reaching almost 150,000 people on social media. And let's take a look at some of the comments from Helen Humelgarad. Some people have difficult names. Okay, so she says, a difficult decision to kill or not to kill. Yeah, damn right. Reeve6088 says, methinks that guy would ask his mother or wife what socks to wear because it's obviously a difficult decision with many factors. I agree. I mean, how difficult is it? You've got a baby at 28 weeks and they're healthy, and you could just deliver them alive or you could deliver them dead. By Faith68 says, love the political speak. Is there a course they have to attend? I know. I mean, I'm literally asking this question 3 times in different ways. And yeah, it's like he's attended some, politics foundations course 101 where they just literally learn how to not answer the question. Beck Demara says, if you get paid by the taxpayer, you should be required to get a straight answer to a simple question. And I agree with you 100%. And the tragedy is during the debate on the Live Birth Bill, no one in the mainstream media even asked him that question. And so here am I confronting him on the street with it, and he can't answer the question. Layla05 says, one script for all his answers, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want to see his own baby being unwanted by his wife, let's say, delivered at full term, only to be left to die and thrown into the biological waste bin. Very good point, because these babies, after they're delivered dead, these midwives and nurses are forced to put the baby in a bin. So there's literally no rights under South Australian law, even to a burial with dignity. I mean, to be honest, I sort of feel like, well, if we're injecting these babies with potassium chloride, burying them with dignity is much of a muchness. But it's even more disgusting, I think, that we actually force these midwives and nurses as part of their day job to deliver this dead baby, even though they went into midwifery to deliver babies alive and to care for these babies. That's why they went into midwifery, because they love babies and they have to deliver these dead babies and then literally place them in a bin, like taking out the trash. I mean, it's not like that. It is taking out the trash. It's just horrific. On the day before they voted on this bill, I interviewed a woman who'd been a midwife and nurse here in SA, and she'd been in the hospital and in the ward where they'd had one of the first late-term abortions under the new law, and they delivered this, I think it was a 26-weeker, she told me, and she broke down in tears in that interview, and I broke down listening to her. It really affected me because for days, because, she just talked about how traumatic it was. So it is just shocking. Oldie but a goodie says, there he is, folks, the man without a spine. Yeah. I mean, Chris Picton, you're not doing yourself any favours here with the people of South Australia being able to answer a very simple question that 99% of people on the streets of Adelaide would be able to answer. It's only the most rabidly pro-abortion, freaky-looking lefties, you know, the ones with the purple hair, you guys know who I'm talking about, they're the ones that think a mother has a right to a dead baby at 28 weeks and up until birth. Normal people don't think this, Chris Picton. And the fact that you couldn't answer the question suggests to me that you live in a political bubble where you are surrounded by pro-abortion Labor staffers receiving pro-abortion left-wing media. You just read The Guardian and the ABC, don't you? I mean, it's just, I can picture it, all of you guys sitting in your little offices, and you don't know what ordinary people think on this issue. Ordinary people, normal people, are absolutely shocked when they find out that we inject babies with potassium chloride in the third trimester and then deliver them dead and then put them in the bin. That's not a normal thing to do, which is why normal people are absolutely shocked by it. Chris Picton, the fact that you can't work that out, that suggests that you might need to do it, not just a course in politics 101, but maybe just basic humanity 101. I mean, Ockver 8 says it best when he says, my daughter was born at 28 weeks. And Tom Koutsantonis, who's a good Labor politician, he posted on the day of the live birth spill about his beautiful daughter, who's now in, I think, her early teens. She was born at 28 weeks, which really brings it home, doesn't it, when you see the fact that these are babies, something that Chris Picton's unable to acknowledge because the circumstances are so difficult and there's just so many issues. Well, let's take a look at what some of those issues are. Apple writes, this is great that he engaged with you. It's a start. We need more conversations at this level. Now, I just wanted to point out, I don't think he deserves brownie points for talking to me because he would be well aware that just a few days earlier I'd posted another video that went pre-viral on socials with the Minister for Child Protection, no less. I'd bumped into her on the streets. Let's take a look at what Katrina Hildyard did when I bumped into her.
Oh, look, Katrina Hildyard. Katrine, you've come out in favour of the bill. Could I ask you what it is you're against with the live birth bill? Because it's
going to something else.
Well, you are on the record as saying that you're against delivering babies alive instead of stillborn. What is the reason for that, Katrine? What basis do you have for saying that this bill is detrimental to the health of South Australian women? What is the basis for that, Katrine? You're an elected member of Parliament. Can't you answer my questions? Not answering my questions. Katrina Hildyard, the Minister for Child Protection, right next to me, when we have had 45 healthy babies killed after viability in this state because of a bill that she drafted, and she won't be accountable to the people of South Australia. What an absolute disgrace, Katrine.
It is an absolute disgrace. Katrina Hildyard is one of the strongest architects of the abortion after birth legislation that was passed in 2021. She is one of the fiercest advocates for killing babies all through pregnancy, if the mother wants to. She sees no reason why that should not be allowed. And, you know, here I am confronting her on the streets. She doesn't even want to answer the question. She just walks away, stony-faced. It's just shocking because, you know, the media won't ask her these questions. She's the Minister for Child Protection. She did a press conference on how she was against the live birth bill. She was organising little seminars in the Parliament for MPs, pro-abortion propaganda about the bill. And then she's finally asked by a member of the public, who admittedly has a phone in their hand and is filming this, but she's finally asked about the position that she takes. And she can't answer that question. She refuses to answer that question because there is no justification. And she knew that in me. She had met her match and I would have held her to account for any BS that she had tried to throw at me. And let's think about the fact that Chris Picton knew about all of this. And so he tries a different approach. He tries to, you know, say, oh, well, there's some very difficult circumstances. Well, Chris, let's make this really simple, you know, for you. You've got a baby that's alive in their mother's womb. They're fully viable, they're healthy, they're 28 weeks, and you think it's a difficult decision as to whether we birth that baby alive or dead. I mean, some people are pointing out that he didn't answer the question. I mean, he actually did answer the question, didn't he? He actually did answer the question. He thinks that that baby at 28 weeks and up until birth should have no rights under the law, no human rights protection, despite the fact that we live in a first world country with a first world medical system that he is responsible for as the Minister for Health and Wellbeing. He thinks these babies should be born dead, and that's the answer he gives. So some people in the comments are raising these difficult issues, so-called difficult issues. Let's take a look at what they're saying. moth girls see them as human, writes, no one aborts their baby or has permission to abort their baby unless the baby is severely malformed and would live a horrible life, or if the baby was posing a serious threat to the mother's life. Wrong. That's just plain wrong. Pro-abortion propaganda right there. Let's flick up on the screen the screenshots of the first 18 months of SA's abortion up to birth laws. We can see 45 healthy babies. So the baby's perfectly healthy. They're not malformed. They're not going to live some horrible life. They're not got any kind of disability, which is essentially what Moth Girl is advocating, that we should just be able to kill babies because they've got some disability. 45 perfectly healthy babies killed for a non-life-threatening physical health reason, or most likely a mental health reason of the mother, where it says how many babies were killed up to a birth late term to save the mother's life? The answer is 0. And it's always 0, because at that stage, if the mother has a life-threatening, a truly life-threatening condition, like really serious preeclampsia, for example, they're not just going to waste time injecting the baby's heart with potassium chloride and then we wait another 12 to 14 hours to deliver that baby vaginally and dead. No. If the mother's life is really at risk, we do an emergency C-section. I shared on socials Leah Darrow's story. She went in at 22 weeks. They said, you're going to die. They immediately got her baby Sylvester out in minutes, and then gave care to Sylvester, who's now a thriving 6-month-old boy, and they cared for Leah. That's what you do in a genuine emergency. Moth Girl, what you're saying is just plain lies. Either you don't know because you're ignorant because the media doesn't tell you, or you are deliberately lying. Lucretis Word says late-term abortions are not conducted on women. They are extremely rare. They usually occur because there is a serious threat to the mother's health by continuing the pregnancy, or because the baby is incompatible with life. Wrong. In the majority of these cases, the pregnancy was wanted. The mother will have told friends and found it again, picking out names and so on. This means the decision to terminate the pregnancy is devastating for the parents. Please show some empathy and stay out of the decisions that solely concern doctors and their patients. How about you show some empathy for the child who's getting injected with potassium chloride and then delivered dead and chucked in a bin? I mean, this isn't a decision purely between doctors and patients. One patient, the baby, doesn't even get a say. They don't get a vote in this as to what happens to them. No, this is a brutal, totalitarian, authoritarian regime that allows the people with the least voice to have their human rights completely trampled over, and you're an apologist for it, along with Chris Picton and Katrine Hildyard. There's a lot of misinformation in that, and you need to watch my first podcast episode on the myths around late-term abortions, because you say that they're rare. Well, as I explained in that video, there's 88,000 abortions in Australia every year. So if late-term abortions are just even 1% of that, which is, people say they're between 1 to 3% of the total number, well, then that's 880 babies getting injected with potassium chloride. It's at least, 2 a day, if not 3. Babies being brutally killed in that way. It's not rare. Lulu and Boys says there is no black and white answer to this type of issue. There are varying circumstances to consider. Sounds a lot like Chris Picton. I mean, it is pretty black and white when you've got a baby at 28 weeks. If it's not black and white for you, then you're a monster. I'm Beautiful Inside says, what if the baby is extremely unwell and not compatible with life? It's a hard one. We just don't know. But making a child suffer for a couple of days outside the womb isn't humane. I'm only for terminations up to 24 weeks for serious medical reasons. And Down syndrome is not big enough medical reasons to terminate. Now, I can agree with you there. I'm Beautiful Inside. Down syndrome is definitely not a reason to kill a child. In fact, there's no reason that's ever acceptable to intentionally kill an innocent human child. But let's look at your question in good faith. You said, what about the situation where the baby's extremely unwell? Is it more compassionate to do a late-term abortion? Well, let's just look at the experience of those babies. Now, we don't poll them, we don't focus group them, we don't know what their experience is, but let's just look objectively at what we're doing to them. So a late-term abortion of 28 weeks involves that injection with potassium chloride that I talked about before. Now, on death row in America, they don't even do this to rapists and murderers. They receive pain relief before they get that injection of potassium chloride because it induces a really painful cardiac arrest. In animals in Australia, I've had so many people reach out to me about this. For animals, they get sedated before they get injected with potassium chloride. And that's not happening to these babies. Even if it was happening, it would be cruel and disgusting. But it's not. Even that is not happening. We're not giving pain relief directly to these babies. And so they can feel this and they're in the place where they're safest and this is happening to them. Now, Let's imagine a scenario where the live birth bill is passed and these babies are delivered. Now, once they're delivered, maybe some of these, and let's make the important point here that most of these babies are healthy. 80% of late-term abortions in South Australia kill healthy babies with physically healthy mums. So they just totally don't need to happen. That's 80% of late-term abortions. And so these healthy babies are delivered alive. They are being delivered alive early under the live birth bill. So they'd go to the NICU, they'd receive care, and then they would get adopted out. That'd be the process. In fact, Anne Wong, 1297, she writes, who takes the baby? Well, the baby doesn't end up in foster care because the goal of the foster care system is family reunion. Katrina Hildyard, the Minister for Child Protection, or should we call her the Minister for Child Destruction? I think that'd be more apt. Her department oversees that foster care system. It is a total mess, but let's be clear, these babies were born after an abortion because we decide to deliver them alive instead of killing them. They can go into the adoption system where there's huge waiting lists for couples wanting to adopt. And, at the moment, those waiting lists are because there's just no babies being born, they're just being killed. And if the mother doesn't want to raise this child, well, then she can sign on that dotted line and then the baby goes into the adoption system. And I know that's not straightforward. I know that for the mother, that is something that's going to be with her for the rest of her life. But so is an abortion. Do you think an abortion doesn't stick with that mother? Delivering a baby stillborn doesn't stick with that mother for the rest of her life? I've spoken to women who just have been so traumatized by this, and late-term abortion, the research shows, is more traumatizing for women. So, either way, you've got a woman who's having to deal with something very challenging, but at least in adoption, she has the peace of knowing she didn't kill her child, and her child goes to a family who takes that child in, who loves that child, who permanently cares for that child, and who is in relationship with that child. It's not ideal. Of course, it's not ideal, but we're doing the best we can in a situation that we're presented with. Okay, so that's with the healthy babies. What about these babies that are really, really sick and aren't going to survive? Is it better to inject them with potassium chloride, which is this brutal, painful thing, or deliver them alive? What happens to them when they're delivered alive? So if you get a baby after 28 weeks, who at that point, by the way, has a 96% chance of survival, if you get them at 28 weeks or later and they're really, really sick, they're going to go straight into the NICU. They're going to receive palliative care. They're going to receive all sorts of treatment to make sure that they're comfortable. No one's interested at that stage, when they're in the NICU, of prolonging their suffering. Those babies are made perfectly and completely comfortable. I've done interviews with doctors about this, Dr. Callum Miller, but also Dr. Melissa Lai, who's a senior neonatologist at the Royal Brisbane's Hospital. That's her job, is to care for really sick babies in the NICU. And, she talks about, and indeed the whole discipline of neonatology is about making sure these babies don't feel pain. And so what's better? Is it to brutally inject a baby in the place where they're safest, suddenly, shockingly kill them? Or is it better to deliver them naturally and then care for them, talk to them, sing to them, comfort them, palliate them? I know which one I'd pick. And just when I thought we couldn't get any lower, Brothersome Ben writes, ain't a baby yet, that's the answer, TBH. It's hard to know even to respond. Let's look up some images of a baby at 28 weeks or at 30 weeks. These are fully formed babies, as I often tell you guys about that study that was conducted very recently, which showed 4D imaging of children in utero at this stage. The mother tastes kale. These little babies grimace because they're like, yuck, that's disgusting. The mother eats carrots and the baby in the womb is literally smiling because the carrots taste sweet. It's just mind-blowing that he could say, ain't a baby yet, that's the answer, TBH. This baby is going to be born super soon. This whole process is about birthing the baby. So what magically happens, Brothersome Ben, in the birth canal to transform this baby into a baby? It just makes no sense. But you're in good company because Chris Picton, the SA Health Minister, also finds this very difficult. So it's pretty clear that the state of politics is pretty low in South Australia when you've got people like Chris Picton and Katrina Hildyard in charge of health and wellbeing and child protection. We need to raise up a new generation of politicians. So the good news is we have a federal election this year and a state election in SA early next year. Follow along and subscribe on the Dr. Joe Show, because I'm going to keep educating you about this. I'm going to keep telling you what the media won't tell you, and spread the word, because we need to create a tidal wave of Australians rising up and holding these crazy pro-abortion loving politicians to account. And that's today on the Dr. Joe Show. See you next time.